Well, good morning, everybody. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Alejandra Villanueva. I am the Senior Director for the Office of Contractor and Supplier Diversity for Empire State Development. Welcome to the Women in Construction panel. We have three amazing women in this industry. I'm very excited to be here and to have a conversation with them. So I will let everyone introduce themselves. Just to quickly give a little bit of background on who I am and what I do. Like I said, I'm from Empire State Development. I oversee the team that manages supply diversity for all of our programs. There is a lot of construction, a big construction portfolio, but all of our economic development programs go through my team and I, and we're the ones managing and making sure that our grantees and contractors are meeting and exceeding their goals and creating opportunities for certified firms. So I'm very excited to be here. We have here with us today Sandra Wilkin, Yolanda Mackie, and then virtually we have Stephanie Pennington. So I will allow everyone to just introduce themselves and we could get started on the conversation.
Thank you. It's great to be here. The forum has been terrific. I feel that everybody is energized and reinvigorated to move 2022 forward. As nicely put in terms of where we are today, my name is Sandra Wilkin. My company is Bradford Bravo. Our headquarters are in New York. I am a very honored, certified women business enterprise in New York State. Like many of us, we serve on various boards. Honored to be the former president of Women Builders Council and serve on CUNY's Board of Trustees and also New York State's team member of the MWBE task force.
Perfect, thank you.
Good morning, I'm glad to be here. My name is Yolanda Mackie. I'm with the New York State Thruway Authority, and I've been there for 11 years, and I am their Chief Compliance Officer. And we've recently done some internal changes at the Thruway where all of our procurement opportunities are looked at for MWBE utilization. And I was glad to be at the gala yesterday where I heard we exceeded the 30%, the state goal of 30%. So I'm happy to be here. Stephanie?
Thanks, Elonda. My name is Stephanie Pennington. I am the Director of Corporate Diversity for LeChase Construction. LeChase Construction has offices all over New York State and up and down the Eastern Seaboard. We also really pride ourselves in our subcontractor program too in supplier diversity. So I oversee all of our internal training when it comes to diversity initiatives, as well as our subcontractor program. I've been in construction going on 10 years and in February. It's exciting to see the changes and the needle moving forward. And I just want to thank everyone for having me today. Thank you.
Perfect, well, welcome. And 10 years, that is quite a milestone, so congrats on that. So just to get started with our questions, I think the first one that we received that we have is, as we all know, the construction industry is very much male dominated, right? So, what do we think, all of us, really attracts women to break out and come into this industry? And I'd be interested to hear everybody's thoughts, but personally, I think the idea of really diversifying and taking on a challenge, of course, everyone's reasonings are different, but I think that there's definitely a desire to make changes, institutional changes to an industry that has been, a certain way for a very long time. So I think that is definitely a key item, the idea of breaking barriers, of developing policies that are going to make changes and really have positive impacts on our fellow women. So I think, I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts on what else could attract women or what attracted each of you to start in construction.
What attracted me to what I do at the Thruway is, part of it is to change the history, to be at a pre-construction meeting where you're looking across the table and you're seeing someone like you. It's having a diverse and included meeting versus just that male dominancy. So for me, it created work opportunity. You know, I think they need, you know, I think heavy highway construction, they need more of women. We may not have to be out there, you know, paving the road, you know, or doing the bridge rehab, but we could be doing something else. We could be owning the business. We could be providing assistance with construction management. So there's a way, there's areas where we can fit in to this male-dominant world, and we can change history. So I think we all should really be a part of wanting to change that, you know, and become more inclusive to and diverse and include women.
Yeah, I love that, the idea of like changing history, changing how things are, and having, you know, change the impact that's really going to be seen in the future for a long time.
I here with our colleagues and learning so much about their background and their history, and women who are coming into having opportunities to be in the industry. Just to go a little backwards in terms of time, I started out in the 70s, which seems quite long ago, I guess. In terms of what motivated me was really about feminism. When I turned on my black and white TV and I saw Gloria Steinem, Betty Friedan, and congresswomen marching on Fifth Avenue, wanting rights for women. And when I went to school, it was about either being a nurse, a teacher, all great professions, or a secretary. We didn't have that pathway to have those opportunities until the legislation started changing, as it has in New York with MWBE programs, and it just turned on the light in my a thought that maybe there is a non-traditional way of being able to have an opportunity. And so here we are with the door opening, many challenges for us in terms of encouraging women. Great profession, and I know we all love our profession here, in making sure that, that we get the women going to engineering schools and having those opportunity to be able to be here and at the table.
Yeah. Talk about barrier breaking, right? Like that's amazing. Stephanie, I don't know if you have any thoughts, or if you could share a little bit about what attracted you to start here 10 years ago.
I do. I mean, it was more of a non-traditional trajectory for me. Being raised by two teachers who cumulatively had close to 85 years of teaching experience, they taught me to embrace a challenge. And looking at construction and my background, which is in law and policy and education, I was really, I was intrigued by the idea of compliance, but as well as the community outreach portion and workforce development portion of what we do. So it really was kind of taking a lot of skills that I had that attracted me to it. But then being able to utilize those and thinking about construction has just been paramount in keeping me here. You're right, it's a male-dominated field, that's a given. But it's time to bring in that female collaborative approach if we truly want construction to continue to innovate through the next however many hundreds of years. Those have to grow like any other things grow. We're gonna have to bring in different approaches, and I think that women bring a different dynamic to the table. I think their backgrounds, sometimes traditionally being heads of their family and raising children, brings a different set of skills to the table when it comes to negotiating a contract or executing a multi-step or multi-phased project. We need it, and it's where we're going in the future. So that's a little bit about kind of where I thought about it when I came in, and it's a wonderful opportunity, a challenge, but a good challenge.
Yeah, definitely a good challenge. And I really like that, the idea of innovating, right? Bringing in women that haven't been in the industry before, thinking about things differently, right, with a different perspective. So I think that hits the nail on the head. Is that the saying, right? So sort of tied to the idea of challenges, Elonda, if you could just tell me a little bit about what you see as being unique challenges for women working in construction, and what are some key strategies that you have seen that work?
So I think the Thruway is, responsible to keep a safe highway. And so the challenge for women would be the experience to actually be able to go out on a heavy highway and do the actual paving of the road. So we need to get some training happening for women to be able to do that. In addition to that, it's access to capital. Most firms that are primes that are bidding these jobs have the costly heavy highway equipment that they're going to utilize to do the work. So it's going to take time for women-owned businesses to come up with that capital, that experience, to be able to go out there and bid on our jobs, and then go out there, be competitive. And then be able to go out there and do what's required. We have 570 miles of highway, and we also maintain over 800 bridges. So that's going to take some time, but it can be done. And I think providing the training, like here, now, every day for a while, we'll get there. But again, I think the challenge is the type of work we do, the nature of what we do, and it also involves the costly, equipment that is utilized. So I think we need to get some capital for these minority firms. We need to provide training, and then we need to support them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Sandra, Stephanie, have either of you seen any strategies that have been helpful in overcoming some of the challenges that Elonda has brought up?
Absolutely. I mean, I was just going to piggyback, for lack of a better term, onto what Elonda says. Coming from a large construction manager, general contractor, design builder, I see that as part of my duty to help with that access to capital, to mentor and to kind of shepherd these businesses, and something we've been doing for 77 years. I mean, it shouldn't be a secret recipe. We should be sharing the knowledge with the small firms so that we're bringing it up and only increasing the bar within the industry. I also see it as a two-headed coin. We've got trades, men and women on one side, and then we've got kind of that engineering, construction management, project management on the other side. I would love to see us really kind of looking at our young people in a different way. Decisions that are being made in middle school. If we want to get women, minorities, more young people interested in construction, we need to be going after them at 5th, 6th, 7th grade with programming that can tie into career and technical education, or maybe into consumer and home economics. That's what they called it when I was younger. But I think we have an opportunity here I know I just showed my age.
Yeah.
But we have an opportunity here to really expose children to what we do, and not to belabor it. My daughter's in 6th grade now. In 5th grade, she took architectural 3D design as a part of what her school system thinks is important to introduce new concepts and new career choices. She used SketchUp. There are still folks in our industry that use SketchUp, or it's the precursor to BIM modeling and BDC. That's what we need to do more of. If we really want to get young ladies interested, we've got to get them interested young.
Yeah.
What a great focus on this question. Childcare. Childcare. We see the young women, childcare and family care. We see it in our company. We see it in the industry, the need to put forth a good program for childcare, and that we'll also see, as you said, the younger folks wanting and interested in coming in because there's a support system for their family. And we're seeing that more and more. If someone looks at the data now, we have, for women, is 10% of women is in this industry. Now, that's obviously a good number given from 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, when it was 7% of the nation's industry. So to look at the issues and the challenges that are there, given what the potential of the work that we're going to see, Alejandra and Stephanie, and what we're seeing here, that we do need to roll up our sleeves and put a program together that would incorporate the areas of family and to make sure that that is part of the enhancement and the essential services for New York and for our companies.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do we make that a universal policy, right? So that it's evenly available to all women that are interested in joining.
The reason I'm here, the reason I think that we're all here, we're a community.
Yeah.
A community of minority and women businesses. 95% of the businesses in New York are minority women and what is considered a small business that run New York. And that advocacy is so much part, I think, of our lives and what we do, and the meaning is to be here in Albany and to make those changes. Legislatively, the administration now has pretty much, I think, has given us full boat to look to help with those changes for us, and to be there in Albany at the time to help with making those policy changes. And many of the organizations that New York has, minority and women businesses, really help focus on making those changes, and they have, and it made a huge, huge difference in us doing business here in New York and the opportunities at the various state agencies.
Yeah. No, advocacy, I think that you're right, that's very, very important. So Sandra, let me ask you, let's switch gears a little bit, or I guess not as much actually. So in relation to recruiting women into the industry, right, into existing firms, what have you observed that firms are doing well to bring women into their companies and into this industry? And what are some strategies that you've seen in terms of retaining and promoting women that you think are really successful?
That is the $64,000 question.
That's why we asked it, right?
Is that we're looking at. And talking to the women, they want to see other women at the office. They want to make sure we shouldn't be necessarily, look, I come from the 70s, so that we're the only ones there, that there needs to be all of us there to help. So growing that level and those goals are critical. Being accepted on the field. I know sometimes that they feel that their word or their understanding, which is probably in some instances better suggestions, to make sure that they have room, that space is available for them to be able to make the decisions on the job. I have a list, and I'm sure all of us here have the same thing. It's about also having the opportunity of women to grow within the industry, that they see that there is either time off, that they can be able to be here and to have an effective family life, as we've seen with COVID ever presented itself. And really make sure that in terms of the women, that there is this, that they're there in the administrative, they're there in the workforce, and they're there in the C-suites too, that there's room on boards for women.
Well, I just want to add to that. Actually, you know, the Thruway, part of our construction projects require not only women-owned business goals, but we also have EEO workforce female goals. And I think if we're looking to train women, retain women, that's a good way of doing it. Our contracts are monitored for EEO compliance, so if there is a month or a period of time where there is no female participation or workforce, we're able to jump in and say, well, what is your corrective action plan? So I think having that in our contract, knowing that that is a requirement, helps us grow the female workforce on the heavy highway construction side. And then we also have a training special provision that requires a training of a female, a trainee. And then once they're done with the trainee, you have to, the prime has to hire the female. So if we're talking about retaining training, Thruway's really, you know, implemented some contract requirements that, you know, I feel that are really important to this cause and increasing the women workforce at that level. So
that's such an interesting, the idea of having it as an agency requirement in your contract, to have these trainings, it's there, so it's something that has to be done, and if it's not met, there's obviously going to be compliance mechanisms that are going to be put in place, and I think that is such an, you know, an interesting idea. And I was going to say, you know, tying it back to something that you had said in one of the previous questions in terms of training is important, I was going to say training is important, and I like that it's, you know, coded in the contract, so it's something that we are guaranteeing will happen for, you know, and be available to women that are interesting. I really like that. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, Stephanie, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to the idea of what can we do, what are some strategies that you've seen are successful. I don't know if there's anything that your organization has done in terms of implementing to recruit more women, promote more women, retain more women.
Absolutely, and again, I'm back to my double-sided coin, where we have the aspect of recruiting more women on the trade side, but also onto what I consider the project management side, and really kind of thinking about it as, are the majority of the women in companies in supportive roles? Are they in roles that have a trajectory to get to the C-suite, like Sandra was indicating? We have to kind of think outside the box, and we have to use what I call the gifts that we're given, especially for our New York offices. Getting females interested in construction and all the different departments that are within a construction firm, like LeChase. We have an asset here, and to me, the asset is New York State, and no offense to my downstate friends, but upstate, the cost of living is amazing. We have a really attractive type of area to have people think about, would I want to live and raise a family here? And I think traditionally that was a question that we thought maybe was for the male head of the family. Well, that's changed. We're in 2021. If we're thinking about opportunity, the ability for home ownership, I was listening to Michael Clay from DASNY, the ability to start to have generational wealth. Let's think about the asset we have in upstate New York and link economic development to attracting females to the industry and then wanting to live in New York and do their work here. I think that's a big part of it. And then also what Elonda said, we welcome our labor goals. And whether we're working with non-union firms or union firms, there's an opportunity to train women. And again, as I said before, I think it needs to start young, but to shepherd them all the way through and to truly see, again, what kind of career choice they're making and how that helps them create that wonderful life for their family. That's kind of how we look at it. Also, employee resource groups, affinity groups. They're called many different things, but we need to use our stellar women to attract and retain more stellar women. And that's something that we pride ourselves in doing. And we're actually kind of revamping our ERG and giving it a name and giving it a mission so that we have women recruiting women back into our company. And that's how it needs to be.
Yeah, looking out for each other, making sure that we're pushing all of us forward. There's actually, Sandra, something that you mentioned that I wanted to touch on. And Stephanie, I'd be interested to see, with you up in upstate and in the industry, the impacts that COVID has had, right, on not just the industry, but specifically on women-owned businesses and women. And how have you, being out on the field doing the work, how have you navigated the challenges that COVID has brought to all of us, but this industry in particular?
Well, there are so many negatives with COVID. I want to start with a positive. COVID has brought back to the table discussions of work-life balance and how can we truly support our employees, and whether that's a retention conversation or an attraction conversation, it's back on the table. We proved throughout this pandemic that there can be hybrid work situations, non-traditional work situations, but we've got to be honest with ourselves. We still haven't completely figured out how to build a building virtually. Let's be clear on that. All right? Yeah. But how can we support our families that were in some unique situations? And again, you kind of, behind me, I have my Buffalo Bills hat. Sorry, I'm a lifelong Bills fan. That was the table my daughter was at for 18, 19 months. That was what we did. So how did we manage that? Mm-hmm. And there were so many questions of what is this going to mean? And I think what it means is that we can have more discussions about telecommuting for the roles that it's right for. We can discuss different types of work sharing possibilities when it comes to our on-site people and making sure that we're supporting them correctly. I think COVID has brought back to the table that innovation again, that idea that not everyone needs to have, we are in construction, so I'm going to use the term, butts in chairs from 9 to 5. That's just not the way it works anymore. There are ways to contribute all over the spectrum, and COVID really brought that back to light. And it's a conversation that we're having internally to truly be able to make sure that we're looking at all different types of work arrangements and how to get the best out of our employees. Because if they're happy while they're working and they're productive while they're working, they're going to continue to be LeChase employees for many years to come. And I know that many of the companies that we work with feel the exact same way.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that spin on it, right? Looking at, there's been a lot of negatives with COVID, but there is a positive. And how can we grow from here and make things better and not just go back to the way that it used to be? And how can we do that to increase, going back to the panel, increase women and minorities in the industry and creating those opportunities for them. So I think that's really, that's very insightful. So thank you for that. I don't know, if either of you have any other thoughts, I guess, sort of the impact of COVID in general, just, in either direction.
Just based on the nature of work that we do at the Thruway, construction did not stop. Mm-hmm. So we were able to continue to pave the road and wash bridges and do what we were doing. And we had minimal primes come back and say, well, this firm went out of business or this firm was not available based on, the pandemic. So fortunately, we didn't feel some of that on the construction side. Although as an employee, we were remote, and we had to go paperless files. So we had to find ways how to communicate with the primes and our coworkers and the vendors that we're dealing with. So we had to figure out a way, okay, how do we set up a Teams meeting? How do we doing conference calls? And I think it made us communicate more, you know. So I would have to say that we weren't negatively impacted by it. Construction continued. Thruway employees had to figure out better ways to communicate, Teams meetings. We had conference calls with our primes and vendors, and we still had access to our files. So we were fortunate, although we were in a pandemic and we were remote. So, yeah.
As we saw in, especially downstate in New York, the COVID impacted us. And for the people now and friends and family and colleagues that unfortunately are just not with us now, that will always stay with us and know that we need to find a better way because we will always have situations like this, hopefully not to the extent of COVID, and that New York will see its way out of this as it has. The minority and women and the small businesses were truly impacted. But what we saw and what we continue to see by our community is that we never say no, and that we strive, and that the leadership and the souls that are in us in terms of business people really made its appearance during COVID. And what we saw was that we had to think about collaboration, that it wasn't a matter of the fact that the job may not be on schedule. We had to think about every aspect of the people, the teams, the individual companies there, and that we had to figure out a way for those companies to be maintained and continue to exist. Unfortunately, some may not have that ability now, but a good number are still here today due to the resources that have been available, but more importantly are the private firms that look to make sure that they helped everybody on the team, and collaboration was key. And understanding that there were other priorities. It was okay for somebody to leave early or not come in because that's the way we had to exist. And we need to have that spirit. And that spirit is in all of us to continue that drive for our industry. And it's not about looking at, if just to talk about hockey, for instance, it's not about where the puck is now, it's where you need to put the puck. And I think that's a lot to do with why we're even here at the forum, to make those changes and those opportunities to grow and to continue understanding that we're here together, and that COVID as a war or as a challenge is never going to take us down. And that's so important, at least how we feel as a company, I think, and how we feel, if I may say, as a community for minority and women-owned businesses.
Yeah, I love those words, right? It's never going to take us down. We're going to continue on together. We're going to be resilient, right? And I think the idea of collaboration, right? Sometimes we're each other's best resource and best, support to be able to, move forward as we need to. So You know, I think that's a very important point to make today. I think tied to that, the idea also of just building the network, you know, not just the network with, and building the relationships not just with the primes and the agencies, but each other as MWBEs, as companies, as women in the industry, right? Because that's sometimes, like I said, where we get, you know, some of the best resources, or, you know, the best suggestions as well. So I think that's also very important to, you know, keep in mind and moving forward, tied to what everyone has been saying here today. I don't know if there's any questions in the audience. I'm not 100% sure how it's best to move around that. If there were any questions digitally.
I think there was one question that we probably can ask. It asks for each panelist to share one key takeaway.
Yes.
What is one key point for the audience to take away? So I just wanted to share, we must continue to discuss and implement policies and practices that ensure diversity and inclusion for women in this construction industry. I think we have to continue the conversation, continue to have our little women being excited about the STEM program in fifth and sixth grade. Continue to look at EEO as part of a contract requirement, which would help hire women, continue to train women. That's only going to help them in the long run, and it'll help us as state agencies. We're the ones that are using their services. So if we can all just share, I just shared mine. Stephanie, I don't know if you want to share yours, one key takeaway for the audience.
Absolutely, and it goes back to the last question, because I think it's going to continue on for a while, that, you know, Sandra and I, being on the private side, we need to be able to share the information that we have about supply issues, about what's happening to projects with our agencies, whether it's with Thruway Authority, if we're working on one of your jobs, or the Office of Contractor and Supplier Diversity on an ESD job. There are things that are being tracked, issues with lumber, steel seems to get better, whether it's roofing material, siding, whatever it might be, that impacts a project, yes, but impacts our small businesses even more. So my takeaway is that we have to continue the good communication, and that we also have to collaborate. It doesn't matter whether we're a big company or we work for an agency or we're a small MWBE. We all have pieces of the puzzle that will help move our projects forward to continue to be a success, on time, under budget, and build New York for the next 500 years. So that's really my takeaway.
Perfect, thank you.
Just in consideration of the time, I feel that Yolanda and Stephanie, I think you've had the last word and the best word, so thank you.
I was going to say the same thing. You took the words right out of my mouth. I love it, yes. I think, well, we're running out of time. We only have a couple of seconds left, but I just want to echo as well what all three of you have said on the panel. I personally found it very insightful, and I hope that everybody did as well. We want to thank everybody for coming and being here today. I think some of us might be around if anybody wants to connect afterwards and speak, but thank you all for being here, and we will see you all, and it was a pleasure to be able to speak with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Moderator.
Thank you.